What About Vietnam? A podcast with Gary Newsom. The series where Curry talks with travellers about their experiences and adventures. Find out more about Vietnam from the people who have actually been there.
What about Vietnam?
Whether it's adventure, exploring the culture and cuisine, shopping, or just soaking up the sun. Let Carrie and her travellers pave the way for a magical holiday in Vietnam.
What about Vietnam?
Xin chào and welcome to What About Vietnam. Today we take a wander around the districts of Ho Chi Minh City, otherwise known as Saigon, to bring you the most up-to-date areas to visit when the borders open up post the pandemic. For those of my listeners in Vietnam, I'm hoping that's going to be very soon. We cover some of the lesser-known local neighbourhoods and introduce you to what I think is, a little bit more of an authentic view of Saigonese life with great cafes, local eateries, pagodas, temples and more. Look, like most busy cities, it's all about knowing where to go. You can waste so much time trying to find places, and while some of the best experiences I've had have been when I've got lost, it's always best to get lost in a happening neighbourhood. I'm delighted to have Samantha Coomber on the show, a British-Australian lady who's currently living in Ho Chi Minh City. I caught up with her there, and she was able to start the episode by just sharing with us the latest on what's happening with social distancing in Ho Chi Minh City, as it's June 21, and I thought it was important for context to include that. Thankfully, it sounds like it's mostly under control, and thankfully we were able to get into the really good stuff, which is to talk about the districts of Saigon that she's fallen in love with. Samantha comes to the show with a library of knowledge and a passion for this city, developed over 12 years of travelling around as a freelance travel and lifestyle writer, including guidebook writing. Samantha's respect in the travel industry was earned very early in her days employed as a foreigner and editorial consultant full-time by the state-run VNAT, Vietnam National Administration of Tourism, in the years 2002 to 2004. She went on to co-author the first edition Insight Guides, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City Smart Guide, covering the Ho Chi Minh City Southern Vietnam sections, and published in 2009. Beyond there, she has written for a myriad of travel publications around the world. She really walks the talk. Some of these publications include the Wall Street Journal Asia, National Geographic Traveller, Condé Nast Traveller UK and India, and many, many more. She has her own blog called The Jade Empress, and you will be able to catch up with all her writings from the links in the episode notes. And for all the detail that she shares with us on this show, that's going to be included in the transcription notes, and you'll be able to download and print that and use that when you come to this amazing city. I know you're going to love this episode, and Samantha is going to really give us some insights that you couldn't get anywhere else. Please welcome her to the program. Hi, Samantha. Lovely to have you on the show. How are things tracking in Saigon at the moment?
Hi, Kerry. Lovely to be here. Yeah, at the moment in Saigon, we have what is called a social distancing 2 weeks. We had this last April, and after a year, we've got that again. It's basically because we've got some spikes in cases in Saigon, and the government wants to keep everything, in hand. So it's basically I can go out of my house and do what I want, go for a walk. I see plenty of people on their motorbikes, people going out to get delivery or takeouts, but non-essential services are closed, which means things like cafes, restaurants, gyms, salons, bars. But it's only for 2 weeks. And I just want to put this in context, Kerry, that the past year or so, compared to other people, I've had complete freedom, virtually complete freedom to go out, do what I want, take a flight down to Phu Quoc Island, socialize with my friends in bars, squashed into restaurants and cafes with all the locals. So it has been a great year, but I think the government's just trying to keep everything under sort of before any explosions happen, being on the safe side.
I agree. And I think the attitude that the Vietnam government took right from the very beginning, with being very aggressive and assertive in closing areas down and, closing airports and really movement, was the best thing they could have done. I mean, their numbers have been so low in comparison to other countries. So I'm glad
That's
you did that
right.
by putting it into perspective. Yeah. Look, we're going to be talking districts today, and I'm really thrilled to do this with you. You're a travel writer, a very seasoned professional in the area of the travel industry, with your own blog, etc., and writing for international publications. And the fact that you live in Saigon, you can give us both perspectives as a tourist once yourself and writing for those magazines, as I said, but also as a local. And I always think the locals know the great places. So you and I got together before today, and we decided to pick out the best districts to focus on. But we need to start with number one, I think. District 1 for me certainly has been where I've spent most time. And it's only really been in my last couple of trips that I've ventured further. And there is a lot more in the other districts, but I think this is where most people find themselves from the very beginning, and for very good reasons, because it's got a lot to offer. So now over to you, Samantha. Tell us what you know about District 1.
Well, District 1 is obviously the main tourist area, but it's where the French actually came over in the late 19th century and set up their own little city as such. And they started building a lot of their buildings in the style of French colonial architecture. And that's a lot of those remnants are legacies are what you see today. So it's a lovely area, and Central District 1 is quite compact and it's easily walkable. And a lot of the sites are down a main artery called Dong Quai Street. So, you can just walk, or take a cyclo ride is nice, or maybe perhaps take a Vespa scooter ride in the evening. But it's quite manageable, and the landmarks are pretty impressive. So you've got the People's Committee building, Hotel de Ville, the Central Post Office, Notre Dame Cathedral, which was modelled on the Notre Dame of Paris, the beautiful Saigon Opera House. And then you've got a couple of lovely colonial hotels, which is the Majestic and the Continental. And as you walk around here, there's other sites, of course. Things like, I must point out to your readers, there's a big boulevard which has now been pedestrianized just by Dong Quai, called Nguyen Hue. And that's lovely at nighttime to walk down. All the high rises around the boulevard are all lit up. It goes down towards the river, but everyone's out. All the locals are out, families and tourists, and it's lined with cafes. And then you've got, there's quite a few war remnants, as you know, in war legacies that are in the city. And one of them is the Independence Palace. That's where the reunification all started. And that's in the center of town. But then you've got all these modern buildings, like the Bitexo Financial Tower. I think that's about 59 floors with a helipad. I'm scared of heights, Kerry, so I haven't had the bottle to go up there. But if you do go to the top, it's fantastic views across the city, so that's recommended. And then you've got real favorites, like, I'm sure you've been there, Bentan Market, which is
Absolutely.
it's another old colonial building. Looks a bit dilapidated, but it's actually a fun place. And I think, and that's the one thing I want to point out about Vietnam and Saigon, that they are quite fun people with a good sense of humor. So when you go into Bentan Market, you can do a bit of haggling, everything on sale there, souvenirs, there's a wet market, you can get your coffee beans there. So that's lovely. But as you were pointing out, Kerry, there are other places in District 1 which are worth visiting as well.
Yeah, and I think the district also offers up a lot of rooftop bars. It's got quite a nightlife vicinity where, you can enjoy all sorts of food, etc. So there's lots of bars and clubs and cafes. And, we talked about on another episode, I was talking to a girl and, just where there's artisan bars and DJs playing all different kinds of music. You've got coffee shops and you've got craft beers. So it's quite an eclectic mix in some areas, isn't it? It's just
absolutely.
it's got a vibe. It definitely has a vibe.
And I must point out, one of my favorite things in Saigon is the cafes and coffee houses. There's too many to mention, but there's lots of them are obviously around this area. And you pointed out, the rooftop bars, that's really progressed in the last few years. So look up when you're walking around, because there's some wonderful ones. Two of the ones actually that are my favorites are at the Majestic Hotel overlooking the river, and the Caravel Hotel, which is actually where all the war correspondents used to congregate for their sundowners. I don't think they did much work, but that's a big popular bar, and that's lovely. You get obviously rooftop bars. They've got great cocktails, but fabulous views for the sunset.
Yes.
And a lot of them have great DJs now, and there's quite a party atmosphere. And of course, there's also clubs, artisan bars. It's really, the last few years, it's really quite the cool cosmopolitan city now.
Absolutely.
And I'd also, Kerry, I'd like to point out to your listeners about an area they probably don't know much about. It's in the very northeast corner of District 1, and it's called Tan Dinh neighborhood. It's actually, they have wards in the cities in Ho Chi Minh City, but it's a small little neighborhood right in the pocket of northeast District 1. People might know it because it's where that beautiful pink Catholic church is the home of. Tan Dinh church, a Catholic church. But there's so much in this area. It's sort of packed into a compact area. You just wander around. One of the great things about Tan Dinh neighborhood is they've got fantastic street food, which is everywhere on the street. And it was originally an old Chinese ghetto centuries ago. So you've still got traces of the Chinese there. And you've got a wonderful marketplace called Tan Dinh Market. So if you find Ben Tan a bit commercialized, then this one is a very local one. And they've got things like a martial arts center. You can watch them practice their martial arts at a temple in the evening. And you can just wander around cafes and street food and the marketplace. So it's a wonderful, it's an authentic slice of Saigon, but it's still in District 1.
Okay. So if I'm staying at a hotel in the primary area of District 1, say at the Rex or something like that, in that vicinity, if I go to the receptionist and I say I need a grab car or a taxi to go to the Tan Dinh area, they're going to know what I'm talking about?
Oh, definitely they'll know, because it's you can say it's the Pink Church and Tan Dinh Market, so they all know that. It's quite well known, but it's not so well known for tourists and travelers. And I think it's a real treat for people to have a wander around.
So, Samantha, if we're going to head to District 2, that does come up as there's a lot of expats in the area, and we've talked about that. I did find some interesting, some shopping there last time. And, there's a few venues like the Deck and Mia Saigon Hotel. But can you tell us a little bit more just to give my listeners your take on District 2?
Yes, District 2, I joke it's called the Republic of District 2 because it's across the river. It's a bit of a drive out, and it is where all the expats tend to congregate to live. So I don't think in terms of the history and the ambience it's so good, but what's so wonderful about District 2 is that it's right along the Saigon River, and there's lots of new developments there to really enjoy the river life. So as you mentioned, there's the Deck, with there's a few bars as well. Now, the Deck has been voted recently one of the top 50 bars in the world. So it's obviously a great place.
Wow.
It's a deck along the river, as the name suggests. Great cocktails. They have brunches, lunch and dinner there, and it's very, very popular. But there are others as well. And you're basically sitting out with the cool river breeze, surrounded by coconut trees, and you watch the boats go past. So there's great places for sundowners. But I want to point out to your listeners that there's also 3 hotels that I know along the riverbank, which are great places if you've had enough of, you want to get out of much as we love Saigon, it can be a bit frenetic and energetic, the motorbike traffic. If you want a couple of nights where you're waking up beside the river. So there's the An Lam, the Mere Saigon, and the Villa Song. These are beautiful boutique hotels. And you can have your breakfast by the river, or as I said, candlelit dinners. Wonderful places to just retreat a bit at the beginning or the end of your holiday.
Sounds lovely. And, I think sometimes, if you can allow yourself a few extra days in Saigon, you can tend to kind of get into its rhythm a bit more. I think when you just arrive, it is kind of overwhelming. I can remember my sister coming on a visit with me, and she was just struck by millions and millions of motorbikes and Bentan markets. I found her gasping standing outside for air because of the tight alleyways. So sometimes, as you say, a district like District 2 is a little bit of a reprieve. It is a little bit more civilized and a little bit I guess catering to the Westerner, but with some lovely little gems in there like you described with those hotels. So I think it's one to still put on everyone's list to check out. And of course, I'm going to have a transcription in this podcast, so you're going to be able to look up these places, and also you're going to be able to contact Samantha for any more information that she can share. And obviously she's got some blogs on this as well.
I just want to tell your listeners as well that the hidden beauty of this is a lot of them provide free speedboat transfer shuttles from the center of town, which is the Backdown Wharf. So you actually get this sort of James Bond style speedboat trip along the Saigon River. And it's just, you can live the champagne lifestyle on a shoestring budget. And it's quite interesting because you go, you're passing a lot of the new Saigon, a lot of the new developments. And then you get the cargo boats going past and some fishermen or local people on a sunny day. It takes usually about 15 to 20 minutes to get to these places. It's such a treat. And as I said, a lot of these places do throw it in, but you have to, for free, but you have to book up in advance because they've only got 8 seats on a speedboat or something. So, but a wonderful treat. I really enjoy it.
Absolutely. And I think it's good to mention the river. It took me a couple of visits before I got onto the river. And I think when you're on the river, and there's some lovely dinner cruises that you can do also.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I think from the dinner cruise or from a boat, you actually get to look back at the city, and certainly at night, it looks absolutely stunning. And it gives you another perspective. Sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you think, oh gosh, you're getting swallowed up. But from the river, you get a chance to kind of reflect back on it, to see it as a city from a different perspective. So I just thought that was also worth mentioning as we're talking about that area. Now I'm going to move you on to District 3, and the reason I want you to touch on that is because it rarely gets mentioned in my experience, District 3. So maybe you can give us a little bit more detail about what District 3 offers up.
Well, Kerry, if you've got all day, I'm such a huge fan of District 3. I always wanted to live here, actually, and then I got my wish came true. It's actually, just to point out, it's probably the oldest part of the Saigon proper. And the French were actually developing this bit before the actual sort of downtown District 1. And what I want to point out as well is that it's such a pretty area. They've still got the remnants of the beautiful tree-lined boulevards, quite a few of those. I think Pasteur and Chongdin are some of the prettiest, but there's quite a few. And they're lovely places to wander around. And there are, as I mentioned, there's sites in District 1. There's a whole list of them, but there's a lot going on in District 3 as well. For example, one of the top tourist attractions in Saigon is actually the War Remnants Museum, which is in District 3, and a very prominent pagoda called Za Loi, which was the scene of a lot of Buddhist monk activity before the Vietnam War. But there's lots of other lovely sites. There's a place called Turtle Lake that your listeners should go to. This is just above the Notre Dame Cathedral. And it's where all the young lovers in Saigon go to. It's full of it's a big intersection with a lake, and it's full of cafes and street food places, a wonderful atmosphere. And then what District 3 is really known for is one of the best places in the city for Saigon's wonderful street food. I mean, street food is everywhere in Saigon, but this is a particular note. And my Vietnamese isn't that good, so I'll just
well, we have that in common.
Yeah, well, as you say, they can read it on the transcript, but I'll just say it's Nguyen Thuong Hien. It's an actual it's designated as street food, and it's in lots of guidebooks and magazines. It's packed with street food stalls and eateries. And there's another one called Nguyen Dinh Chu, which is another place which is excellent for street food. And then there's Saigon's oldest building, which is here, which is the Tan Gia Palace, which was built about 1790. And there's also some very interesting wartime legacies here from the Vietnam War. One of them is a secret weapons cellar where they stashed away weapons during the Vietnam War, which is on Nguyen Dinh Chu. And there's another place, maybe some people know about it, some don't. It's a noodle shop, which is your pho ga, which is the chicken noodles. And this is a place called Pho Bin. And when you go in, you just have which is one of Vietnam's iconic dishes, the pho ga, the noodle soup. You're eating your noodle soup, but it was actually a secret HQ of the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War. They actually used to congregate up in the mezzanine level to plan the Tet Offensive during the Vietnam War, but no one knew about this. People were just eating their soup. So when you go in nowadays, they've got the owner will give you photographs and talk through about this. So you have these wonderful sort of wartime legacies here. So it's definitely worth wandering around, just soaking up the atmosphere and eating yourself crazy with the street food.
I'm sure people that have an interest in Vietnam and Vietnam history, and certainly war history, whilst some of that isn't for all of us, but people that were involved in the Vietnam War and sometimes go back to visit. There's lots of tours that do take you around some of those places that featured strongly in during that period. I think that was really good to mention, Samantha. Very good. I think one of the other things I think we talked about wasn't it voted one of the world's top 50 coolest neighborhoods or something?
Yes, and of course, and I have to live in one of the world's coolest neighborhoods.
Of course you do.
Of course I do. This is actually Time Out London. I'm actually from London, so that was great. They did a list of the world's coolest neighborhoods, and it was amongst the top 50. But I think they recognise that the historical buildings. There's lots of French colonial villas. Obviously, some have been pulled down, but actually, there's quite a few still standing, which people like the consulates now are housed in. And there's another thing I wanted to discuss with you and the listeners. Where I live in District 3, there's a wonderful canal area. Again, my Vietnamese is not the best. It's called Nhớ Loc Thi Nhé Canal. And to be fair, it does go through 5 districts, including District 1, and there's a few others. But in District 3, I think it's the poshest bit. It's the most scenic part. So that's why I wanted to discuss it in District 3. So, Kerry, shall I tell your listeners about what's going on along this canal area? Okay, so it's I stumbled across this by accident, and judging by how few foreigners are walking around this canal, I think people should maybe sort of know about this, because it's one of Ho Chi Minh City's biggest urban redevelopment projects. It was finished redevelopment about 2012. So today, when you're walking along, it's a wide, a broad canal which is lined with trees, hibiscus flowers, bamboo, frangipani trees. This is right in the center of the city. And it's got a lovely walkway so you can do your exercise or have a lovely sort of evening stroll along there. It's packed with locals all out doing their exercising and gossiping and just getting together, walking the dog and whatever. And another thing which is wonderful about this, it's lined with the most gorgeous little cafes, very atmospheric, very artsy, which a lot of people don't know, packed with locals, and some of the most beautiful pagodas, which I didn't expect to find along a canal, which I've written about on my blog post in quite a lot of detail. Some fantastic old pagodas which have been here for centuries. So it's a wonderful place to soak up the local atmosphere, have a coffee, have some street food. The street food is delicious here. If you don't want to have a stroll along, you were mentioning about river cruises. And what I find fascinating is now they run sunset cruises along this canal from District 1 through District 3, sunset cruises. So I've been doing my exercise for 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm sunset cruises with DJs for tourists go past. And they have dinner cruises lit with fairy lights and gondola rides, like little
gondolas.
Gondolas for that romantic, maybe you want to drop a proposal or something. But for me, this is like, when I first came to Saigon, this was a sort of what I class as a stinky black canal, like years ago. Now it's this happening, cool area. And as I said, it does go down into District 1, so you can catch it there. It runs past the Saigon Zoo. But you can actually do boat rides. I've even seen stand-up paddle boarders along there and kayaks.
Oh, my God.
And a lot of people go fishing there. So it's a real... Why I think people should know about it is a real slice of local life. Everyone's out doing their thing, but you get authentic cafes and street foods and beautiful little pagodas, which they're not crowded. They're just sort of virtually empty. So it's a wonderful place to just stroll around, explore, or maybe take a boat cruise through.
So, Samantha, I mean, I think that's a good thing to just cover off for everyone listening, is that, the things that we're talking about aren't totally reliant on the overseas tourist, because we're talking about, a population of, what is it, about 8 million?
So it's nearly 9 million. Yeah. And that's in the metro area. It's one of the most...
we're talking about places that are going to be here beyond COVID, because let's face it, we're probably not looking for the country to open its borders maybe till 22. So, I thought it was a good thing to just mention for everyone listening that we don't have an expiry date on this episode. We're trying to talk and keep the focus for everyone who's listening, that these are the things that you're still going to be able to experience and, be able to wander around and explore after COVID, when COVID
exactly
is a thing of the past.
Exactly. I mean, this place is buzzing all the time. Even during the social distancing, you still got people whizzing around and everything, but it's a wonderful, wonderful energy here. And that's the same for the Tan Dinh neighborhood in District 1. That's such a buzzy local area. And whatever happens in Vietnam, they just keep rolling on with their energy and their local communities.
Absolutely. Now, every city, I think almost every major city in the world has one of these, and I'm referring now to Chinatown, which sits in District 5. And I hear from you also that this is a favourite one as well. I mean, tell us more about Chinatown, Saigon.
Yeah, I love Chinatowns around the world. As you said, everyone's got one, but Chinatown in Ho Chi Minh City, it's to the west, quite to the west of. It takes about 25 minutes and a taxi ride to get there. And a lot of people tend to go, a lot of visitors tend to go in tour buses and just do this quick in and out, do all the main sites and then going out, which is fine. But I think it's a very underrated area. And why I really love the Chinatown here is that it hasn't been commercialized. It's not like the Singapore one, which is, I love that one, but it's almost like Disney-fied in terms of a big tourist area. Whereas the Chinatown here, which is called Cholon, is very much a working local area. I mean, of course, you've got the main pagodas, which I'll discuss, and a few sites, but it's not laid out for tourists. It's a big working area. And the name Cholon is actually translated as big market. And that's the thing about this. It's all about trading and wholesale and retail and a hive of activity. So when you go to Chinatown, you're seeing a really local area, but very different from the ones I've described, because it's the local Chinese Vietnamese community. And it hasn't got a sign. When you're actually getting into Chinatown territory, you know you're getting in there because you've got all these Chinese characters on the buildings and signs. It doesn't say "Welcome to Chinatown." Because you've got the Chinese the characters, and it's got a very distinct feel to it compared to other parts. I've been going there for years. I wrote a walking tour for a Wall Street Journal Asia. And I'm obsessed with the place. And every time I go down there, I see very few foreigners. And very people don't speak English, but I must say people have been so friendly to me. You just point at stuff, if you can't communicate with each other. People have been very welcoming and friendly to me, perfectly safe to just wander around. And I just want to point out there's going to be obviously the main landmark areas, which a lot of tours will go to, and they are worth a visit. The main things in Chinatown are the pagodas, and they are not only the oldest ones in Ho Chi Minh City, but they are also, I'd say, the loveliest. They're just so exquisite, beautifully decorated, and they are working pagodas and temples. So when you go in there, it's not for show, or it's packed with people worshipping, and you're almost crying because the incense is so strong in there. And they've preserved them very well, and they are absolutely stunning. So the main one is Quan Am Pagoda, which is the oldest. It was built in 1740. But you've also got the other one, which is very well known, Tin Ho Pagoda. That's 1760 built. And then there's a few others. And this is the beauty about Chinatown, is it's a vast area. It actually spills out into District 6 and District 10. But the main area that you want to visit is actually quite walkable. The only site that is a little bit further out is the famous Bintay Market, which you must go to. It's the biggest market in Chinatown. I mean, it dwarfs the size of Bentan Market.
Wow.
And it's sort of just into District 6, but it's a wholesale market, but it's absolutely fascinating. And then you just jump in a taxi back to the main sort of concentration of the pagodas. And also, there's two other sites I want to point out. There's a street called Lung New Hoc, which is where you want to buy your lion dance masks, and it's a ritual. It's a ritual costume street. It's where everyone buys their things to worship in the pagodas and the temples. And it's also called Lantern Street because the Mid-Autumn Festival, the end of September, it's all beautifully lit up with lanterns.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
just near
Love that.
there, if you've got any energy left, because it's there's a lot to see, and it's still worth visiting, is the traditional Chinese medicine street. I'm not even going to pronounce the name, but it's very well known. And that's when you wander along, you see all the bags of Chinese herbal medicine and roots and barks. That was very important before. It's sort of dwindled a bit, but it's still quite visible. And as I said, all this is quite walkable. And then when you've had enough, you can just, if you're not on a tour bus, you can get a taxi back into the center of town again. So it's very manageable, but I do recommend having a wander around District 5 Chinatown.
So that's on the top of my list when I'm back. I haven't had a chance to experience Chinatown there in Saigon, so that's definitely on my list. I think some of the things that you've mentioned, which kind of ring some bells for me, in the sense of, some of these districts are about 25 minutes out of town, and by the sounds of what you're saying, you need to allow yourself, at least a few hours to walk around to discover everything. And I think people have got to be prepared that, there's a little bit of mooching and musing and some of the sights and smells and things are going to be strange and probably taking some people out of their comfort zone to experience, but definitely worth being curious and looking into, sticking your nose into places. Being mindful, however, when you are walking around that, you've just got your bag that you're carrying, etc., well sealed so that, you can't have any kind of experience like bag snatching or anything like that happen in any of these districts or anywhere in Saigon. I know some people have had that happen and, that's kind of marred their experience of Saigon. And
Yeah,
I would hate that to be the case. So I'm mentioning it just to be aware and, holding phones out and taking photographs by all means do that. But just be mindful that, a driver could just whiz past and grab that phone very quickly. So it's just a matter of common sense.
Yes, it's common sense, and I must say, I've been here in total 8 years, and I personally have found it myself. I've used common sense, etc., but I found it very safe to wander around on my own as a single female, wandering around the city as long as you use your common sense and not dress ostentatiously, and as you said, stick your hand out and you're taking lots of photos and everything. But I found it very safe and very welcoming. And it's a great place to just, people are very friendly, even if you wander down an alleyway. And I think when the borders are open again, I think people are going to be even more welcoming because they'll be so happy to see tourists back again. But it's how I've done a lot of my discoveries in this city is just, sticking my nose down an alleyway.
Being curious.
Or being curious, looking up. I found a fantastic cafe at the end of Dong Khoi in District 1, which is wonderful river views. I didn't know existed, but I looked up and I saw, this is great rooftop cafe. So it's a case of, being careful, but having a good look round, because you'll find on the whole people are very friendly and welcoming here.
Yeah, but I think one thing I want to mention is definitely keeping that curious and open mind and keeping a positive attitude, because I know sometimes, you'll be taking I'll be taking a friend, I'll say, we've just got to go down this alley. Now, a Westerner doesn't really think that that's a good idea in a lot of cities around the world, going down small dingy alleys, etc. But you can go down a small alley in any city in Vietnam, in fact, and find yourself then into an oasis, or open a door, and then you're walking up some steps. I mean, even in the Caravel Hotel, I don't think it's changed, but you go up these, you get the elevator to level 9 or 10, I think it is, and then you go up these, kind of crappy old steps. And then you're on this amazing rooftop bar that overlooks the city. So it's just, there's got to be a little bit of trust, I think, that goes into some of your travels, and, either trusting the guidance that you're getting. And I think people, I'm hoping, listening to this podcast are going to get from, yourself and myself that, we've had good experiences because we have been curious and been willing to just step out of our comfort zone a little bit, but being, mindful of not being, as you say, ostentatious or flippant, and being respectful. And I think the Vietnamese are very open to being friendly if you are friendly to them, and courteous and being respectful. And I think you get more from the Vietnamese out of that, even if you fail to be able to pronounce their language. I think if you try, and I think if you endeavor to show politeness, they will they will do anything for you. I've had some, this podcast has given me a great opportunity to talk to people who have traveled in Vietnam, and people sharing their stories, telling me, that people have opened their homes to them to heal from an injury, or they've lost something in the street and someone's run, after them with their key card because they dropped it or something like that. So, there's really good stories to be told, but, it takes two to tango. And I think you're right. I think coming back after COVID, the country will be very welcoming for tourists. And it kind of is what motivates me to do this podcast. And I think, the fact that we've been able to talk to you, Samantha, today to share your insights is just going to be gold for people coming back. Samantha, it's been absolutely fabulous having you on the show. I'm going to have to say farewell now, but I hope everything continues to go well in Vietnam, and maybe we'll see you in Australia very soon.
Thanks so much, Kerry, for this wonderful opportunity to chat with you. Thanks so much. All the best.
Thank you for listening. Check out the episode notes for more information.
What about Vietnam?
Don't forget to subscribe, rate and review, and stay tuned for more fun adventures in Vietnam.
What about Vietnam?